Hey,
Hey,
how's it going?
there we go.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. Just trying to figure out what was going on.
I have no idea. You never know with these Google Hangouts.
Some days.
Yeah. How's your week been? Short week, I guess.
Yeah, just trying to pack a week's worth of work into 3 days.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure that's fun.
Yep. Plus, trying to get a lot of homework done before.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You don't want to be doing homework over Thanksgiving.
No, I know I'll be doing quite a bit over the weekend, but oh well.
Joy.
Yeah, it's funny. I got some people in some of the other classes. They're only taking one, online class, and all the rest
Yeah.
are on campus classes. And they're like, "What? We have assignments due?"
I know. I don't know what this is. Gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very impressed by you and all the other people that can take the online classes. I mean, I guess in certain circumstances, it's the only thing that you can do, but man, I am not a huge fan of online classes.
I'm not anymore, but I'm getting down to the end, and I'm just trying to get through.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So yeah,
Oh,
just want to get finished.
yeah,
But
yeah. Well, Tanner should be joining us, I think, from what he said,
yeah,
at
he said he
least.
was going to.
Um, and so with the doohickey, she was saying it's due on the first.
Yeah, she moved it clear until the first.
Nice, which is Friday.
I believe so. So
I think
she
it
moved it
is.
back almost a week.
Cool. Okay. And then um, this week's readings were quite confusing for me, just like the ones that we were actually supposed to read. I remember you saying something about since we have a small group, we didn't have to follow exactly like the instructions said.
Yeah.
So,
So that was really set up to be for a large group, like of 10 or more.
okay.
So you were supposed to
Wow.
divided into two groups. One group was going to be a management. The other group would be the labor. And you
Gotcha.
were supposed to read each different side, and then actually, as a group, decide on what your negotiating um, terms were. And then you had your two group leaders that would then start another hangout. So you'd have three different hangouts going on. Yeah, I was like, that's crazy, and there's no
Yeah.
way to do it with three of us.
No. Yeah, we each have our own hangout. They were just talking to ourselves.
So yeah, so you'd have a hangout with the people that are assigned labor, a hangout with the people assigned management, and then you'd have a hangout with the two team leader or the two leaders. And so the two leaders would then get together and negotiate and come to an agreement, and then they would send that agreement in an email out to everybody, and they would decide whether or not that met their needs. And then you go to a second round of negotiations, basically questions based on what they wanted. So
Wow. Huh.
it was a really convoluted, big,
Yeah.
huge thing that I didn't see how it was going to work for small groups.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely not, but
Mr.
cool.
Johnson couldn't even really explain it. So,
Yeah. So is it like no one in the class is actually doing that?
well, I think some of the groups were going to try, but
Well,
I
good
told
luck
her,
to them.
yeah, I told her, with three of us, I don't know that that's necessarily
No,
worth it.
no.
And like I said, I've actually, I think I have quite a bit of experience at it.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, I'd be more interested in just hearing your experiences and kind of picking your brain on that because, like I said, I think I must have read the management part then. I read 2 of the case studies. I was trying to do that while coming down here to Utah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it
Yeah,
was
they're loads of
interesting.
fun to read, aren't they?
Yeah, they were great. Yeah.
Yeah, I went ahead and looked at all of them, but I just I got to the point where I was skimming through some of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, should we
Anyway,
start and see if Tanner joins us halfway through or partway through?
yeah, I don't know. Send him a quick email and see if he.
Yeah, you want to try that?
Yeah, let me send one really quick. Let's see.
Okay.
Figure maybe he's driving home.
Yeah, seriously. He said he's from. Is he from Burley
Yeah.
or another? Okay, Burley. That's right.
Yep.
Gotcha. And you were originally from Burley?
From Paul, which was across the
Oh,
river,
gotcha.
but
Okay.
pretty close.
Do you come
So, yeah.
back? Do you go back to Idaho a lot, or not too much?
Um, I was up there. We usually come up a couple times during the year.
Okay.
My wife spent 3 weeks up there during the summer.
Nice.
Um, I was up there for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Then we'll be up there at Christmas for 2 weeks.
Okay. So you still have family up here?
Yeah, all of our families are both of us have all of our family up there in Idaho and Utah.
Gotcha.
We're
Very
the only
nice.
ones that left.
Gosh dang it.
Yep.
Huh.
So, but yeah, so it's interesting because I know a lot of Tanner's family.
Really?
Yeah,
That's crazy.
I went to school. It'd be his first cousins once removed.
Huh.
Um, and then so it's his dad and the guy that I knew, or their family. I knew his dad's cousins.
Okay. Small world.
Yep. And they all live up there. In fact, yeah, they were in the ward when I was growing up, and um, we farmed right next to each other
Huh.
and all that. So I know quite a bit of his family.
Yeah. Wow.
And he looks exactly like him, which is
Really?
hilarious.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, that's why when I saw him the first time and he started
Yeah.
talking, I'm like, oh my gosh,
It's gotta be.
gotta be related.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's pretty funny.
That's good.
But anyway, yeah, he hasn't responded.
Mhm.
So I'm guessing he's traveling then.
Yeah, that's probably right. What's going on?
I know he said he was trying to get home today.
Right.
So he said late worked for him because he was going to try and get home. So
Right.
anyway, so yeah, I guess it's you and me.
All
We'll
right.
talk about it however you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. Well, I'd be I mean, I did like the case and I thought it was interesting. Not trying to, bash on the case, but I would just be curious to understand just like the how so I was confused as how like the employees had so much say. And I understand like because we had talked about it a few weeks ago how, the union has a lot of say in the company, but it seemed like the employees almost had like too much of a say and in how things were going.
So it depends on a lot of things,
Yeah.
and organized labor is actually a very I mean they have a lot of power. Um, they do have a lot of say in the way things are run and what things happen, and they have a lot of influence. Um, especially when you're talking about the fact that the frontline employees are your biggest group. And
Right.
so, like that case study was saying, they had 2,000 employees that were represented by that local compared to, how many managers.
Right.
So it is a huge uh, difference. And so those groups actually can be very very strong. And then it depends on what industries you're in and where they're at. So like where I work, they're it's very rare you find places that are not um, represented employees.
Uh-huh.
Almost every place has unionized drivers,
Yeah.
um, and so they're pretty strong. And they can strong arm a company um, just through their sheer will and power of people and everything else. And it also depends on what's going on in the economy. Is the economy up? Is the economy down? Um, is there high unemployment or low unemployment? Are wages going up or down? So a lot of those kind of things just uh, either lend more power to them or not. So,
Gotcha. And so who decides who's like the head of the labor union? Like, is it some, like, I just picture it as like some rebel that kind of breaks off and says, I'm gonna, support the employees. How exactly is that brought about?
so usually most unions are already formed, and so they're part of the AFL-CIO, which were two major labor groups that merged together. I can't remember, in the 30s or 40s, um, and those two groups really merged. And so then what you have is you have a lot. You have major unions like the Teamsters. You'll hear about those quite a bit. Um, those guys represent a lot of drivers.
Gotcha.
So trucking industry has a lot of Teamsters, buses, those are all Teamsters, um, things like that. The United Auto Workers, that's probably one of the largest unions in the country,
Hmm.
UAW. Um, and then you've got in different like manufacturing plants, you'll have the millwrights. And so they kind of, the unions form basically around specialized um, job functions that they
Okay.
do. So the unions are already out there, um, and, and and you have to realize everything I'm saying is coming from a company standpoint,
Right.
a management standpoint.
Yeah.
I've actually been a member of a union, but for the last 17 years I've been on the management side of it,
Gotcha.
and so it's kind of been interesting in that respect. Um, so the unions will go out and they will seek out um, places to unionize, and so they'll like I had mechanics that were not unionized for a long time, and one person in there decides they want a union, so they'll go contact a couple of those unions and then see if they can get them in there.
Yeah.
And in the U.S., the right to organize is a protected right. So if somebody goes out and says, hey, they approach somebody about a union, the union says, yep, we'll come in and represent you. Here you go. In order to have that happen, we need 50% of the employees to sign cards. And they'll do what they call a card signing campaign. And that card says that, you sign that card, you are electing to have that union represent you.
Okay.
So then they'll go around and they'll talk to each of the individual employees. Hey, would you please sign one of these cards? Would you please? And they'll basically petition everybody to sign them. Once they get at least 50% of those cards signed, then they go to the National Labor Relations Board. They present that to the NLRB, and the NLRB then contacts the company and says, "Oh, by the way, this union has sought the cards and they would like to represent the people of your employees. And at that point, then there's they have to vote them in, and whether or not they choose to be elected, they choose to be represented or not. And then depending on the state, some states are right to work states like Idaho, Utah, a lot in the West are right to work states.
Uh-huh.
So when they choose to elect a union, then they also choose if they want to have an open shop or a closed shop. If it's an open shop, they can have employees that are union members and employees that are not union members. If it's a closed shop, they can only have employees that are union members. You have to join the union.
Huh.
In order to get a union representation, they have to have 50% plus one. So if you have 10 employees, you have to get 5 to vote for it plus a 6th one.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they go through that. Once they choose to be represented, then, as management, you stop individually working with the employees. Everything goes through their representation. So a union representative, and then usually at that point, then they will designate somebody as a shop steward and a union rep for the property and those kind of things. And those are the only ones that you then negotiate with from that point forward.
So who's paying those people that are representing the employees?
So the people that are representing the employees outside of the location, those are all paid through union dues.
Gotcha. So does the employee have to pocket that?
If an employee joins the union, they have to pay whatever dues are associated with their union.
And do they usually get a pretty good ROI on that?
Depends. Depends on what they are. Typically, most unions will look for 2 hours of pay per month.
Okay.
So whatever you make per month or per hour, they're going to expect. Yeah. You make $10 an hour, they're expecting $20 a month from you.
Gotcha.
So it just depends. Some of them are less, some of them are more. They have to notify their members what that they're gonna charge them and how they do that. And
so sounds like quite the headache for management.
Yeah, it can be. It just adds an extra layer of management in there. You can't manage the employees directly at that point.
Gotcha. So like, even if, let's say, you're a manager and you're calling somebody in to give them like a performance review, do you have to also call in their representative, or how does that work?
That depends on the state also, but they have what are called their Weingarten rights. And basically you have to notify any represented employee every time that you're going to have any conversation with them that they feel like could be negative or lead to any discipline. They have a right to have representation.
That seems I guess it's the thing, but like that just seems dumb. Yeah. Like, just being honest, like it just seems kind of like.
Yeah. So if I call an employee and I want to talk to him about an instance that happened in the shop, I call him over and start to talk to him. The first question I have to ask him is, hey, would you like to have your union representative available?
Oh, boy.
And if he says yes, then I have to have I cannot go forward. I can't have any conversation with him until I have a union representative. If there's not one there, I can't have that conversation until I can make a time that both those employees can be there.
Just seems like you're treating them like, not that it's your fault or management's fault. It's like the union thing, but it seems like they're not adults, because they have to have like their mom or dad holding their hand, and like that's weird. I don't know.
It's
That's
tough
so strange.
situation. It makes it interesting.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, so it adds a lot of paperwork. So every time I'm going to have a conversation with somebody, before I'll have that, I ask them if they'd like to have a union representative.
Yeah.
And if they say no, then I give them a piece of paper that says, I so and so am declining my right to union
Oh my gosh.
representation. And they check it off, they sign it, I sign it, and I have another person sign it.
Oh gosh.
Because
Yeah, this is like the first time hearing of all this, and it just seems strange, but
a Weingarten violation is a big violation. You don't ever want to do that as an
yeah.
employer.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
so
That's
yeah,
crazy.
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. So you guys always training on new procedures and rules and stuff like that? Does it change a lot, or is it pretty consistent?
Uh, a lot of it is pretty consistent once you learn the basics of the what's required by the state, what's required federally, and your company may have specific instructions also on how you deal with
Yeah.
the union.
Right.
So once you learn those things, that's pretty much the same. But then you get into their negotiated contracts too.
Okay.
And they can choose to negotiate all kinds of crazy things. Not if
Yeah.
they don't just negotiate wages. They negotiate working conditions. They negotiate, you know, benefits. They negotiate wage. They negotiate uh, disciplinary processes. They can negotiate just about anything.
Jeez. And where does the HR manager fall into place in this? Is he or she more on the manager's side of things, or is he or she kind of rooting for the employees? Not that the managers
Mm,
aren't rooting for the employees, but you know what I'm saying?
typically, where I've seen the HR manager is really just following up to make sure both sides are even.
Uh-huh.
And HR managers usually aren't going to get involved in uh, disputes between labor and management. They're
Gotcha.
gonna they're taking care of the other things because um, the disputes between labor and management are usually going to have some sort of resolution built into a contract, usually a
Uh-huh.
grievance and arbitration procedure.
Uh-huh.
So, if the union doesn't like what happens, they have the right to grieve it. They file a grievance to the company, and then they'll have a process on how that plays through. So like usually what that means is they'll have a shop steward file the grievance, which is usually a written piece of paper, lists out what the violation is in the contract, who did what to violate it, and then they'll take that to, through whatever steps are labeled into the contract. So if it goes
Uh-huh.
to the general manager or an assistant manager or whatever, and then that person hears it, listens, basically like a judge, basically listens to the case, decides what whether it's yes or no, and then they submit a response. And then usually there's a way to escalate that up all the way up to, either an arbitration or that can be binding, or even some of them I've seen go to what they call panel judges. They're basically judges for hire.
Hmm.
But you can find these panel judges that'll come and sit and they'll listen to both sides of a case, and then they'll give a ruling. So a lot
Interesting.
of different. So it then becomes a big huge process. Usually the grievance and arbitration process is over terminations or um, work rules, discipline. Those kind of things are usually what are go through the grievance and arbitration process.
Gotcha. And then, so if an employee, um, decides, hey, I think that we should be getting more lunchtime, or I think that we should be getting more pay, or this or that. Does he kind of, he or she kind of start that off and try and get some people to say, yeah, I agree too, and then they then go and meet with the um, people that are representing them, like during work time, after work time? How do they initiate that contact and then get enough people to back them up? Is it like they're walking around in the office during the day saying, hey, sign my card, sign my card, sign my card? Or
Yeah, they can actually do that, and it's a protected right
really?
for them to do. So they can do it on work.
Wow.
A union can't come into the location and do
Uh-huh.
that, but they
Okay.
can sit across the street
Huh.
and off the property, and they can have everybody walk across the street on a break and listen to them.
Wow.
So it's pretty interesting. Once they get that started, that's some companies take a very hard stance to try and they actually will engage in union busting.
Huh.
Um, other, probably one of the biggest companies that you read about doing that is Walmart. Walmart's
Really?
managed to keep unions out of them, out of their
Huh.
stores for a long, long time.
That's impressive.
But they have a pseudo union just within their own employees. It's just
Gotcha.
not a nationally recognized one.
Huh.
Um, Other places just flat out will bust them by saying, "Fine, you represent employee, or you want to be represented." They close the doors, and then they go hire all new employees.
Wow.
Um, so
And how worried are, like, let's say your company or other companies, how worried are they that, a union's going to start a strike and then that's going to just kill business?
it can become a very big worry. I've had to deal with a couple of strike threats over the last few years, and it's a huge worry, especially
Yeah.
where we're very public because we're running public transportation.
Right.
So, I mean, the union takes it very quick to the newspapers, and they start a public campaign very quickly about how overworked they are and how underpaid they are, and um,
Huh.
you know, it becomes very political. Or in the industry that I'm in, so
Yeah.
that gets pretty rough. Um, other other places, it's not as big of a deal. If it's a small place, a small number of employees, I mean, it can be devastating to a company.
Yeah.
They can they can close you down, stop you from doing work for quite a while. Um,
Right.
some of the other things you have to deal with is if you have a company go out on, or if you have employees that go out on strike on you. Um, one thing that will happen is the very first thing they'll do is they'll go out and ask, uh, like UPS, to stop delivering to you because UPS employees are union,
Huh.
so they're sympathetic.
Yeah.
And so they'll say, hey, we're not going to
Holy
cross a
crap.
strike line. So any deliveries or shipping, you have to make other arrangements for.
Wow. So they're really just out to get you.
Sometimes they can be. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Huh.
if like at the shop I'm at, I have 3 different unions that represent 3 different groups of people.
Yeah.
And, they technically can all, if one of those goes on strike, they can all be sympathetic to that and walk out at the same time.
Huh.
2 of the unions, the last time we negotiated with them, though, we negotiated in uh, no strike clauses with them that said they cannot honor a strike by one of the other unions.
Gotcha.
So,
Hmm. And is it pretty transparent who's, in the union, who's pushing things in the union within the employees? Like, you're walking around the office and you can say, okay, I know Jack is in the union. I know he's in the union. I know this guy's in the union. And, or can you be pretty secretive
uh,
and
some of
anonymous?
them, some of them can, some of them are pretty open and blatant about it.
Gotcha.
So you
And
just got
like,
to pay
honestly,
attention.
deep down, does management kind of think like, that person's, kind of annoying. He's probably not going to be able to work his way up because of that fact, or um, is that not too big of a deal?
No, because you really can't. If you single a person out for being a member of the union, you'll be in a lot of hot water really fast.
Gotcha.
So one of the things that I think is the saddest in working in union conditions is that you no longer have the ability to work one-on-one with people.
Mm,
You always have to work it as the whole group.
really?
So, one person's a star performer. You can't
Right.
give them an extra raise. You can't, a lot of times,
Oh, right.
you can't give any preferential treatment. You can't do anything like
Yeah.
that. So everything becomes very across the board. Everybody gets the same. Says okay.
Uh-huh.
Says that.
Okay. Huh. And so if an employee chooses not to be part of the union, then could that person, receive those raises even though his or her coworkers aren't?
So all of the states that I have worked in, um, what the union does is once they have enough representation to come in and be recognized, they represent all employees classified under their charter.
Okay.
So if they are chartered as the representation for all employees that drive a bus,
Uh-huh.
then they represent every employee in my location that drives a bus, whether they
Gotcha.
join the union or not.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
so every employee under their purview then is afforded the same representation, the same rights, the same pay, everything else. So, which is crazy to me because why would you pay? And our drivers pay almost $100 a month in union dues.
Jeez.
But why would you pay $100 a month out of your paycheck when you get everything the exact same,
Right.
no matter what?
Yeah, that's true.
And the
That's a good
union
point.
has to represent you, even if
Hmm.
you're not a paying member. Um, if you are in a discipline situation or whatever else, you can request the union to come and represent you, and they have to.
Wow. Yeah, it wouldn't really make sense to say that you're part of the union then and pay that $100.
Yeah.
But do a lot of people do it anyways?
Yeah. I mean, the union's pretty good at strong arming them. They
Wow.
come in every place that I've been. I mean, they had to get at least 50% of the people
Yeah, I
to
guess
agree
that's
to
true.
it anyway. So
Right. Huh.
at that point, once they sign a card, they have you as a dues paying member.
Wow.
That's what a lot of people don't recognize is that
Yeah.
um, you may even think it's just an information card that they're asking. That's usually the ploy that they come in with is,
Really?
hey, here's this card. If you sign it, we'll provide you additional information about the union. And as soon as you sign it, what you don't realize
Oh
is that
boy.
if you read the fine print, it says you're signing to have them be your exclusive representation.
Wow.
And so um, once you sign that card, they
Yeah.
just they send a note to management that says this person has signed a card. Start taking dues out of their check.
Wow.
So,
Gosh.
and it happens.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Hmm. Well, I'm trying to think. Those are all the questions I can think of. Thanks for letting me pick your brain a little bit.
No problem. So I will tell you, it's
Yeah.
interesting because that in this reading, it talked about it, they act like it's a really short process in negotiating these contracts.
Yeah.
So I brought home my last negotiations,
Yeah.
and I'll show you what it is.
Oh.
So this was my last contract negotiation.
Oh.
Let's see if the
Holy crap. Is that, oh man. Do you have to write up that stuff or is it? mostly written or?
So what these are, I mean, page by page, you go through it
Oh my gosh.
and you read it. You're sitting there with them. You discuss language. You change it. I mean,
Oh, that does not seem fun at all.
and you
Like,
go back and forth and back and forth. So my contract with, and this is my drivers. My contract with the drivers is, I think it's 48 pages. No, um, it is 78 pages.
oh my gosh.
But you can see that it's a 5-inch
Yeah.
binder completely full.
Oh my
And that
gosh.
was meeting and going back and forth with them for usually 2 to 3 days a week for almost 4 months.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Gosh.
so
You
the
think maybe
contract,
just cut them the tie and just say, okay, this is going to take us, you know, 2,000 hours. We'll just give you the, oh,
and so that it is it's a negotiating is a huge expense too, because
yeah.
for us, um, that's uh, let's see, there's the union members, which are we have to have two union members that aren't available to work those days because they go to negotiations because they're the shop stewards, and then the union um, presidency is there. So the union usually has 5 or 6, 7 people on the negotiation committee,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
and then the management side, we usually had the general manager, assistant general manager, and an operations manager, and
Oh
then an attorney that comes from out of state that has to fly in. You're paying their flights in. You're paying their
gosh.
hotel, their food,
Oh.
and then a regional manager that would come in for us. So
Yeah, that's
there's
a lot of money. And,
there's
and 2 to 3 days a week for 4 months.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, that's you're talking like millions and millions of dollars, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, and yes, I mean it's a big contract. That's the contract that I oversee is about about a $35 million a year contract.
Wow.
But
Yeah, that's a lot.
that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So so that contract with the drivers was expired on July 1st, and we negotiated. Uh, I would say there was almost 30, 35 different times that we sat down to negotiate between February and July 1st for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day.
Oh my gosh.
So now, some of the other ones that I negotiated this last year, I actually negotiated all three unions in 1 year, um, which was brutal. Um,
Yeah. Do you
the other,
enjoy doing that stuff or is it not
I
very fun?
don't. It's not very
Yeah.
fun,
Yeah.
because here you are, you're negotiating with people that you work with all the time,
Yeah.
and they're saying, well, we want a $5 an hour raise. And going,
Yeah.
well, I'll give you a 20-cent an hour raise.
Yeah.
And no matter what, it always feels like, you know, they're always looking at you as the bad person, trying to take everything away from them. And
Yeah.
when they're saying, well, the company makes money, we want to make money. Well, you don't understand all the pieces of the puzzle. So,
Right.
kind of like this case study was talking about, they were coming to the employees to say, hey, we've got to cut wages now while we're still in business.
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, we'll go out of business.
Right. Yeah. And then they don't have a job at all,
Yeah.
which is even worse.
So it's that's the hard part, and it's hard. You're all
Yeah.
you're sitting there across the table from people that you work with on a daily basis, and
Yeah.
after it's all said and done, you know, nobody ever feels like they win in this situation.
Yeah. No,
If
that's
the union
tough.
feels like they win, then the company's going to feel like they lost something major,
Right.
and they're paying way too much. If the company feels good, like they won, then the union's going to feel upset that they didn't get enough.
Right.
So it's
Oh
it's
boy.
it's really tough.
Yeah, that's really rough.
So
Huh. Does anybody enjoy that process?
I think a couple of the attorneys,
Really?
if yeah, labor attorneys, some of those guys enjoy it, but I
Yeah.
don't know about anybody else.
Oh man. And you're saying that things are turning more and more towards unions in companies?
Well, it has because um, it's the sitting president that makes appointments to the National Labor Relation Board.
Okay.
So they're they're the one that appoint the judges and a lot of other people there that rule on labor law and everything else. So the National Labor Relations Board under Obama became very, very pro labor,
Hmm.
to the point that if an employee filed a claim or the union filed a claim, the company was guilty automatically.
Wow.
Um,
Gosh.
so as far as employers, they're now looking at Trump being in the presidency
Uh-huh.
and hoping he's going to make appointments
Mm.
to the labor board, and he's already appointed a new director of the NLRB.
Uh-huh.
But there are some people below him that still need to be replaced that
Mm.
would be more pro business. And
Gotcha.
usually they try and keep that board kind of balanced, but
Uh-huh.
um, Obama had the ability to replace 5 of the 7 board members.
Oh man.
So he uh, he really skewed the table
Yeah.
pretty tough. So I got called into the labor board multiple times on different charges, and you
Huh.
walk in there and there's pictures of Obama on the wall, and they're all all their offices are decorated in all kinds of union stuff. Um,
Wow.
they're all major union supporters.
Huh. Interesting.
That's pretty tough, and that's going to take a long time to turn that back around to where it's a little more 50-50.
Yeah.
So, and then anytime you have to deal with a labor judge, it
Uh-huh.
depends on where you're at. Like Arizona is part of the Ninth Circuit, so those judges and arbitrators and everything all come out of California.
Mm.
So it doesn't matter; they're pro labor.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, well, you can kind of guess what they're gonna be.
Yeah.
And so with that huge book, do you have to know that pretty darn well?
Well, so what that is that is it's about 45 or 50 pages that you looked at it and we said no, we don't like this sentence, we don't like this sentence, we change it, we'd send it back to them.
Gotcha.
And you always keep every copy of it so that you can watch what happened during the negotiation process, so that if there's ever an issue and a judge gets involved, they can come back and
Oh,
say, what was
okay.
the true intent? Well, you can show the company's intent all along was to strike this language out. We didn't want this. We don't want this. We don't want this.
Yeah.
Um, so that really is that 75-page document just over and over and over and over and
Oh,
over
okay.
again
Gotcha.
with changes until you get to the last one that both sides agree to.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
So when they originally gave us their first proposal, they wanted, I think it was 10% raises every year for 3 years.
Wow.
And by the time we were done, we had negotiated it down to a 5-year contract that was 2.5% the first year, 3%, 3%, 3%, and then 4% the last
Hmm.
years. So,
Nice.
and it which was still way more than I wanted to pay.
Yeah. And do you get even like do you have like a lot of disagreements even within management of what you guys are talking about and what you think they should get or shouldn't get?
Oh yeah, it is, because there's things that are being negotiated in there, especially when it comes to discipline and stuff like that. Like um, this union is really good about if anything that gives rise to discipline, you only have, they wanted to only give you 3 days to
Uh-huh.
issue discipline, um, which is really tough on a manager to say, okay, I found out the employee did this. Well, I found out that he did it 4 days ago. I can't discipline him.
Yeah, that'd be that. Yeah, it just doesn't seem right, but I don't know.
That's the way it goes.
I would have thought.
They can negotiate all that stuff. So
Oh man.
pretty interesting. So, so managers are wanting to have more ability to manage the discipline. Other managers are wanting more ability to do other things. So that's ultimately what it all ends up being is how do you balance it out so that everybody's happy.
Right.
So,
Jeez. Interesting stuff that I really had no clue really even existed before this class. Oh.
yeah. Yeah, if you can, I would say if you can ever avoid it, avoid it. But
Yeah.
more than likely, if you get into management and you get into any larger companies, you're gonna get involved with it somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So
Doesn't sound super fun, but I guess it's just part of business. So.
eh, some of it is, some of it isn't. But yeah, just depends on what they're doing. Some of them can be real ignorant, and the
Yeah.
old thugs lifestyles
Right.
where they come out strong arm, they threaten people, they key cars. I've had that happen.
Holy cow.
Break windows.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, that's quite intense.
yep. So,
Gosh.
but yep, makes it fun.
Yeah. Very interesting. Well, thank you. Seriously, thank you for all your knowledge again.
No
This is,
problem.
I was telling my wife I mean, it's probably not ideal for you, but it's super nice for us to be able to have somebody that has experience and knowledge, and it just brings a completely different perspective because, us 20-year-olds don't really have much to go off, but it's good.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife about that. I said it's interesting because this is the first time I've been in a group that, most of my classes have been pretty split, or a
Yeah.
lot of people my age, and so
Uh-huh.
it's a lot more back and forth with life
Right.
experience. But no, I enjoy it. I appreciate you guys asking the questions. And
Yeah. Gonna be ready for a career in teaching.
no, those are all unionized.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, that's true. My wife wants to be an elementary school teacher, and she says that union is just horrible.
Yeah, that's a tough one. The,
Yeah,
the teachers unions can be very, very tough.
yeah, the teachers' unions. That's what it is. Ooh,
Yep. So,
huh. Interesting.
but yeah, I mean, unions have done good things
Yeah.
in the U.S.
Uh-huh.
My thing is now, most of the time, what they're not needed.
Yeah.
There are labor laws that offer the protections. There's OSHA for safety and working conditions. There's wage and labor laws that are in effect. There's all these other things that have come into effect from a federal standpoint
Right.
that used to be what unions really promoted and gave employees. Um, so all employees are protected to that sense now through the federal laws
Right.
in most cases. Unions really just add an extra layer. And if you really dig down into it and find out what they do with all those union dues, it's pretty crappy. I mean, they do a lot
Really?
of. Oh yeah, I think they say it's 85% of donations that are given to campaign finances and stuff like that come from
Yeah.
labor
Yeah.
goes to Democrats.
Oh boy.
So I'm not saying Democrats
Yeah,
are
yeah.
not.
No, but they're the ones that are then, re-supporting the labor unions in the
Exactly.
most
And
part.
even if you're a Republican and you work for a union,
Right.
you can't designate where your dollars go.
Huh.
Once you hand those
Very
dues over,
interesting. Yeah.
it's up to that union management, that union leadership where they do. So
That
um,
doesn't seem right.
those kind of things, they fund all kind of stuff. They have lobbyists that are very, very powerful. It's a dirty, corrupt game almost, but
Wow.
they're good at it.
Yeah.
So
Jeez. Interesting.
yep. So anyway,
Huh.
well, I
Well,
better let you enjoy your family since you've
yeah, you too.
traveled down there and
Yeah.
have some
Thank you.
fun.
Yeah, for sure. I'll write up an email sometime this week about the doohickey, um,
Okay.
and we'll figure that out.
Yeah, since we have most of next week to turn it in now,
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah,
there's any.
that's nice. Not too much of a hurry, but
Yeah,
I'll
I'm
get
not.
that.
And like I said to you guys, I'm not real stressed over them. I mean, it's
Yeah, I'm not
read
really
through the
either.
stuff, write up a couple pages. Maybe we could stretch it out a little longer, I guess, and
Right. Yeah, I guess maybe.
add a citation. But
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about
Yeah. No, I'm not either.
it.
Okay. Sounds
Anyway,
good.
all
Thanks,
right. Well,
Grant.
you bet. Enjoy. Have fun.
All right. Yeah, you too. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yep. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye.